right. So in order to get started in week 1, we first need to identify a problem that exists in the literature, all right? So let's talk about that a little bit in more detail. So perhaps the problem that we'd like to identify, perhaps this is a question that professionals are curious about, yet a summative meta-analysis hasn't been done to answer that particular question yet. And I want you to think back to the previous mini lecture where we discussed the difference between primary and secondary research. And then we took it a step further and discussed appropriate questions for a meta-analysis. And so to get you thinking for your upcoming assignment for week 1, here are a few examples of some metas that have been done in the past. Okay, so looking at online learning versus face-to-face classroom learning, looking at the efficacy of psychotherapy for adults who present with depression, looking at sex differences in romantic attachment, the efficacy of prayer, the efficacy of psychotherapy and pharmacotherapy treatment for binge eating, looking at the alliance in child and adolescent psychotherapy, and looking at the effectiveness of music therapy with children and adolescents. Okay. So it can be a bit daunting to try and come up with a meta-analysis topic, especially one that hasn't been done before. And so to do this, sometimes it's helpful to think about potential problems that you might be aware of that have been discussed in the literature. So there may not be a lot of evidence out there about a particular type of treatment, so looking at its effectiveness can actually be pretty helpful. And to take that even a step further, thinking about treatment effectiveness and then treatment effectiveness with a particular type of diagnosis, that's also an interesting question that can be examined as well. What if you were curious to know if there were 2 leading treatments that are typically offered for a particular diagnosis, but you wanted to try and uncover if one treatment had a stronger or more positive response to treatment than the other? You could compare treatments to explore their overall effects. And the same could be said for exploring the effects of different theoretical orientations. Okay. If you're interested in looking at an overall relationship between variables across a large bed of literature, this would be a correlational meta. And so you might have some idea, but a meta could really look at this on a larger scale. And really, the list goes on and on with types of problems that we could examine. So narrowing a topic, once you get an idea, then you want to consider ways of narrowing that topic into something meaningful that can be examined. You'll also want to see, has there already been a meta-analysis published on this topic in this area? If so, you want to ask yourself some questions. So if so, is it recent? Okay, how long ago was this meta-analysis done? What has been published in this topic area since it was published? And then, is there another angle or something unique that you could examine if you were to look at this topic so that you would be putting your own spin on it? Okay, so thinking about that as well. And then you'll need to scan the literature that exists in order to see how much there is available in a particular topic area. And if you have a topic that's either too specific or unusual and not much has been published to date, there's not going to be enough studies for you to conduct a meta. So let's talk a little bit about lit searching methods, okay? So when you're searching for existing studies, You of course want to use scholarly databases, so PsycInfo and EBSCOhost, things like that, that are going to be reputable sources where we're going to be able to get the full text from. We're not going to rely on Google, Yahoo, etc. Okay, Google Scholar can be a helpful and quick resource that can point you in the right direction, but keep in mind that you will not always be able to access those articles that you find on Google Scholar, so it can actually be a very frustrating process. So just skip that and hop over into EBSCOhost to save yourself both time and the headache. Something that I also like to mention is what's called reference chasing. Okay, so it can actually be incredibly helpful to look at one article that you know is relevant and is key to an area of literature that you're interested in, and then chasing the references that they have cited that may be additional resources for you to closely examine. Okay, and then past meta-analyses. So let's say that you're researching a topic that's already been done before, and you're looking at that topic from a slightly different angle. Unless there are, very specific criteria that are set for your meta-analysis, you'll want to make sure that you include the studies that they examined as well. Otherwise, you could be missing huge pieces if you're trying to summarize literature in the same topic area that a previous researcher also summarized. A little bit more about searching in the electronic databases. So here we're going to review some helpful tips for getting kicked back the types of articles that you're actually looking for and not garbage. Okay, so we want to be as specific and inclusive as possible, and so we don't want to be rigid with just typing in one term. You're going to try things out numerous times and fail, and that's just part of this process. So switch things around if you're not getting any hits, or if you're getting too many hits that are coming back to you, etc. You want to use parentheses to group common search terms. Okay, so some of you may or may not have heard about using search terms in parentheses, and so I will go over that in the next slide. Use the Boolean operators. I'm not sure if you all have heard of this term, but in EBSCOhost you'll see that there are big drop downs between the search term category boxes where you can choose and, or not. And those are very helpful for this process. And so I'll teach you how to use those as well. And then don't be verbose with typing what you're typing into the search bar. Okay, so if you type in a really long, thing that you're interested in looking at, it's not going to get you anything. Okay, so if you literally type in studies looking at CBT or behavioral interventions for anxiety that keeps people at home, that's really not going to get you anything. Or it's going to get you way too many things that a lot of them are going to have nothing to do with what you actually hope to look at. So a little bit more about the Boolean operators. Okay, so when you use and, this is going to get you anything kicked back that has to do with both of those search terms that you use when you use the and between two terms. So it definitely narrows what you're looking for. You're going to get a study that has both of those terms in it. If you use the or operator, this is going to expand it a bit because it only has to have one of those terms in order to be returned to you. Okay, and if you want to use the not operator, this is a little bit more complicated, but let's say that your subject area is getting so many hits that you're really struggling with how to narrow it down, but you keep seeing things pop up that are definitely outside of the realm that you're interested in. So let's say that you want to be looking at adults, but you keep getting things about children and adolescents that are popping up. So using the not and then putting children and adolescents with that are definitely going to exclude those hits. So it can be a really nice trick to help lessen the hits that you're getting back to be more relevant. And then using parentheses. So using parentheses are very important, and you want to use them in order to group like terms together. So think of all of the variants of a term and then put them within parentheses. Okay, and I'm going to show you what I mean on the next slide. Okay, so you want to start with the population that you're looking for. So let's say we want to look at children and adolescents. If we were to just search for children, we are going to miss out on a lot of data for this population that we've defined. Okay, so think about all of the different ways that this population could be described in published articles. Okay, another trick, when you use the asterisk behind a word, what that's going to do is it's going to return any word that begins with that specific prefix. And so it's going to return anything in any version of what that word could be in your search. So let's say you type in teen with an asterisk. That's going to return any article that uses the word teen, teens, teenage, teen-age, teenager, teenagers, plural. So you're really getting everything that's out there with how it could be described in these sort of different ways. And so to just re-emphasize, why would you want to do that? Because meta-analyses can actually be very heavily criticized if it appears that you have missed seminal articles in the field, in the bed of literature, that actually do exist. So you want to be casting the widest search possible so that you don't miss anything. And you want to reference chase as well. So next, let's add the treatment piece to it. Okay, so you would be looking at CBT in this example. Okay, so effectiveness of CBT with child and adolescent populations. So we would do cognitive thera with an asterisk, or CBT, or behavior with an asterisk, thera with an asterisk, or cognitive behavioral. Okay, and so why didn't I go with COGNITI with an asterisk following that to shorten cognitive? This would have returned just about anything, even including the cognitive development of rats. Okay, so you name it, cognition of any kind. Not what we're interested in. So you want to be really careful about where you place an asterisk, because it's really going to return anything and everything of what that word could be. And then to talk about another example, so why is thera followed by behavior? So if we didn't tie thera to behavior, it's going to kick back just about every article with the word behavior in it. Okay, so we want to be mindful of where we're putting those asterisks. Okay, so just with giving you some of these tips here, you can kind of see how searching can be a bit tricky, and you'll need to play around with it a bit to see what you're getting kicked back and how to improve and refine your search terms. And so lastly, putting it all together, here is how you would do that. All right, so you start by putting the parentheses around your like terms, so like for child and adolescent, and then you're going to include your Boolean operator, so and, because you want articles that have the population and the therapy you're looking for, and then including the therapy that we just talked about, but also putting them in parentheses. And so that bottom bullet there is what it would look like when you're putting it in EBSCOhost. And this is what your problem identification assignment looks like. And we just looked at that in our first mini lecture tonight on the Canvas website. And you'll download this form and you'll go through the items that I have asked you to fill out here. And that covers our second mini lecture for week 1.